Hey everyone, welcome. So, you're on your way to becoming a plastics processing technologist, which means you're going to be shaping the materials of our future. But here's the thing, to really control a material, you have to understand its secrets. And in this explainer, we're going to do just that. We're going to unlock those secrets using a really powerful set of tools. Let's get right into it. Just think about it for a second. Whether it's a car bumper sitting in the Arizona sun or a critical medical implant inside the human body, the success of almost every plastic part comes down to how it handles heat. So how do we figure that out before a product fails out in the real world? Well, the answer is a field called thermal analysis. Now, this isn't just one single test. It's a whole family of techniques where we measure a material's properties while we carefully heat it up or cool it down. It's how we take all those invisible changes happening at a molecular level and make them visible. Today, we're going to focus on the three big ones you'll use all the time in your career. We'll start with DSC, then jump into TGA, and wrap up with DMA. And at the end, we'll talk about how you choose the right test for the job. Okay, first up is differential scanning calorimetry. You'll almost always hear it called DSC. This one is all about tracking heat flow to figure out how a material behaves. So what is DSC actually doing? Well, it measures the exact amount of energy a material soaks up or gives off as you heat it. It's kind of like asking the plastic, hey, how much energy do you need to melt? Or how much to go from a hard, glassy state to a soft, rubbery one? Those energy changes tell us everything about the fundamental transitions happening inside. The machine itself is actually based on a brilliantly simple idea. You take a teeny tiny sample, like 5 to 10 milligrams, and put it in a little aluminum pan. Right next to it, you place an identical but empty reference pan. Then, a furnace heats them both at the exact same rate. The machine is constantly measuring how much extra juice the sample needs compared to the empty pan to keep them at the same temperature. That difference in energy, that's the magic number we're looking for. Now you'll run into two main flavors of DSC instruments. The heat flux type has one furnace for both pans, and it measures the tiny temperature difference that develops between them. The other kind, power compensation, actually has two separate mini furnaces, and it measures how much power it takes to keep them at the exact same temperature. They get to the same answer just by taking slightly different paths. So if you were in the lab, the procedure is pretty straightforward. First, you've got to calibrate the machine with a known standard, like indium, to make sure it's accurate. Then, you weigh your sample very, very carefully. You pop the sample and reference pans into the machine, tell it how fast to heat up or cool down, and hit go. The machine spits out a graph called the thermogram, and that's where you start digging for clues. So what does this thermogram tell you? Oh, so much! You can pinpoint the glass transition temperature, or TG. That's the exact point a hard plastic gets all soft and rubbery. You can find the precise melting temperature, or TM, for crystalline materials. You can even calculate the percent crystallinity, which is a huge deal because it tells you how organized the polymer chains are, and that's directly tied to a material's strength. All right, on to our second major technique, Thermogravimetric Analysis, or TGA. Now, if DSC was all about energy, TGA is all about mass. The name pretty much gives the game away, right? Thermo for heat and gravimetry for measuring weight. TGA simply measures how a sample's weight changes as you heat it up. You can think of it like putting your material on a super sensitive scale that's also inside an oven, just to see what burns off and exactly when it happens. The heart of a TGA machine is basically two parts: an incredibly precise scale, called a microbalance, and a furnace you can program. The sample sits right on the balance inside that furnace, and the machine records every tiny change in mass as the temperature climbs. But here's the really cool part. You can control the atmosphere. You can run the test in nitrogen to just watch it decompose, or you can switch to oxygen to study how it burns. And why is this so useful? Well, for quality control, it's a game changer. TGA can tell you the exact temperature a material starts to break down, which sets its upper service limit. It's also amazing for figuring out what a plastic is made of. By running a test in nitrogen and then switching to air, you can tell exactly what percentage is the polymer, what percentage is a filler like carbon black, and how much is just water that it's soaked up. And that brings us to our third and final powerhouse technique, dynamic mechanical analysis, or DMA. So DSC was energy, TGA was mass. DMA is all about the real-world mechanical response. How does it actually behave when you push on it? DMA works by poking or bending a sample with a small repeating force while the temperature is changing. What it's really doing is testing the material's viscoelastic properties. The best way to picture it is to imagine rhythmically tapping the material as it gets hotter and hotter, just to measure exactly how its stiffness and its ability to absorb that tap changes over time. Inside the machine, your sample gets clamped in tight. The instrument then applies a tiny, repeating force and it measures the strain, basically how much the sample bends or deforms in response. As the temperature goes up, you can see how that relationship between the force and the deformation changes. The amount of deformation tells you about stiffness, and get this, the tiny time lag between when the force is applied and when the material actually responds tells you all about its damping or shock-absorbing properties. The data you get from a DMA gives you three key values. First is the storage modulus, or G'. That's just a fancy term for the stiffness, its elastic nature. Then you have the loss modulus, G', which represents its viscous side, how well it dissipates energy, like a shock absorber. And finally, you have tan delta, which is just the ratio of those two. Tan delta is incredibly useful because where it peaks is often the most accurate way to measure the glass transition temperature. And this is where DMA is an absolute superstar. Its sensitivity. Because it's a mechanical test, it can actually detect really subtle molecular wiggles and movements, things that DSE, which only looks at heat flow, completely misses. That sensitivity gives you a much more detailed map of your material's behavior. Okay, we've got three amazing tools. Now for the most important question. How do you know which one to use? Let's put them all side by side. Think of this as your cheat sheet. If you're asking about energy, like when does this stuff melt or get soft, you want a DSC. If your question is about its makeup, what's in this, and when does it burn up, you grab the TGA. And if you need to know about how it performs, how does its stiffness change when it gets hot, then DMA is your tool. You know, if you remember just one thing, make it this. TGA tells you what it is, DSC tells you when it melts, and DMA tells you how it behaves. See? They don't compete with each other, they work together perfectly. And in the real world, you'll very often use two or maybe even all three of these on the same material. That's how you build a complete thermal profile. And having that complete picture is absolutely critical for everything from basic quality control to figuring out why a part failed, to designing brand new polymers from scratch. So remember these three, DSC, TGA, and DMA. They are absolute workhorses. They're fundamental, powerful tools that are going to be in your engineering toolkit for your entire career. You now have the keys to unlock a material's deepest secrets, to really understand its limits. So the only question that's left is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? What amazing new material are you going to help create?